if you don't know what I do, I'm a software developer and I have been for about 15 years now. And I'm going to be talking about designing the invisible. So this is a talk about digital design, but it's also a talk about the physical design and the world around us. Because when it comes down to it, really, to our primitive monkey brains, the digital and the physical are the same from a design concept. So what I want to do is to introduce you to a few tools and techniques and ideas that will hopefully help you navigate this landscape of invisible design that's all around us.
Seb,
Tool number one.
One question. Would you prefer questions at the end?
Questions at the end.
Okay.
Tool number one, affordance. So I think the best way to think about affordance is if you were a medieval peasant and you were in a time machine and brought to a current day, or if you were an alien from another planet visiting for the first time and you encountered a product, what does that product naturally invite you to interact with it? What does it afford you? Now, I think the best piece of affordance in design ever created is the doorknob. I think it's an absolute masterpiece of design because it's intuitive. It all invites you up to grab it and twist. Getting a little bit more complicated, another piece called wonderful affordance in design is a toaster. Mm-hmm. Now again, think about the medieval peasant analogy. If you were transported, give that peasant 2 slices of bread, so I want to toast this, and he'd never seen this, you could figure it out. There are 2 bread-shaped slots in the top, and you can't even put the bread in sideways. You have to put it in top ways. And then the only other thing this affords you to do is push down on it, and it clicks in place. And when it pops up when the toast is ready, just enough that you can see the toast is done. Absolutely wonderful piece of affordance in design. It's easy to underestimate affordance and think that something affords something it doesn't. And I apologise, this is yet another bloody Star Trek. You're seeing a pattern here. But this is from, I think it's Star Trek 4, The Bales. It's where, for those not familiar, this is Scotty. I think they travel back to the 70s or the 80s. 80s. 80s?
Isn't this a kid's book?
Liquid or liquor?
Computer. Yeah. Hello, computer.
Use keyboard.
Oh, great.
So it's very, very easy to think something affords something when it doesn't. So you really have to think of that peasant or alien mindset.
Just the lock or glue.
So affordance gone wrong. Even though we know about this, even the experts get it wrong. These are very famous. They're called Norman doors. Everyone has encountered these in their life. It's the door, when you go up to it, you go to push it, it clangs, and then you pull it because it doesn't indicate, it doesn't afford which way you do it because they put the handles on both sides. Yeah. This is a solved problem. It's so easy, yet it's endemic in architecture. The affordance way to do this is to have the flat panel on the push side because all it affords you is a push, and then a handle on the other side to naturally afford to pull. Another piece of avoidance gone wrong. Taleb would say architects design for other architects. Yeah. Product designers, unfortunately, design for other product designers. And this is a really famous piece of design. It won numerous international awards. Does anybody know what this is?
I have one.
Yeah. Do you have one?
I gave it away because it's so.
It looks like that thing from the Matrix they used to get the bug out of Neo.
I know what it is. It's a lemon squeezer.
Highly lauded by the international design community. Absolutely crap. Yeah. Another example of affordance gone wrong, you see this all the time in urban design. These are called desire paths. I think in America they might be called elephant paths in some places. The French call them donkey paths. And this is where the urban design has optimized either beauty and not really thought about user experience. So what happened is the graphs afford the user the opportunity to get where they want to get to quicker, and over time, it's carved out. This has also been sold by sold absolutely geniusly by Michigan State University. And when they built their campus extension, I think it was the early noughties, but again, don't quote me on any dates. They built the campus extension first, turned it over, and then waited a year and let the students carve out the desired paths and then build the paths afterwards.
So
I
I'm
am absolutely
to
brilliant.
build the bridge. Yeah.
Absolutely brilliant piece of
Wow.
urban design. Tool number 2.
Can you go back to that slide? I'm sorry. Thanks.
Absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
Tool number 2, the goal for the valuation and execution. If you were to ask me what's the most important software concept to design good software, for my money it's this. And I'm going to give you another analogy. I want you to think you're standing at a chasm, and that chasm is only 1 foot wide. If I asked you to cross that, you'd say, yeah, sure, you just step over it. Your goal for the valuation, the mental energy, the complexity required to assess that is very slim. And the goal for the execution, similarly, is easy. Now, if I say that chasm's 3 foot wide,
That's different.
you're going to think about, I could probably do a running jump and get over that. A little bit more stress on the execution and evaluation, but you could do it. Now, if I said that gulf is 100 foot wide or 200 foot wide, suddenly you're going to have to expend a lot of energy thinking I need to build a bridge or I need to, charter a plane or something to get across that. And similarly, executing that's really complicated. The best design narrows the goal for the evaluation and execution to as small a gap as possible. I think the place we're going backwards in this is car design. So it used to be that we have these beautiful tactile buttons on your dashboard. And driving is a very mentally taxing thing anyway. And you could put your aircon on or split your radio station. The goal for the evaluation and execution was tiny. Now we've got touchscreens. There's no tactile feedback. We've widened that gap. Half the settings are buried in a bloody menu somewhere. And we've really, really gone backwards with this. For my money, by the way, Bentley are absolutely wonderful at this. They've got this knob where how far you can turn the knob changes via a tiny motor, depending on what you're trying to do with it. So you naturally have your minimum and maximum hard-coded for whatever you're doing. It's a wonderful narrowing of the goal for evaluation and execution. Similarly, when we look at digital design, we want to narrow that gap. And there's this theory, a related theory called information scent theory. And it goes, if we can't narrow the gap, we at least let the user think they've got a good chance of figuring it out. And Amazon are absolute masters of this. So they use the information scent theory, by way of the analogy here, is of a truffle pig or a fox trying to sniff their way towards what they want to get. Amazon are beautiful with this because they have a website with 10, 20, 30 million products. But within 2 or 3 steps, you can sniff your way through exactly what you want, get it in the cart and buy it. So not only are we reducing the goal of execution, they're giving you confidence that you can get where you want to go by the way they design the hierarchy of their website. The exact opposite of this, by the way, is any government website in the world, where it's absolutely impossible to find what you want. Tool number 3, skeuomorphism. So what do we do when there's a paradigm shift? What does this afford us? It affords us nothing. It's a black rectangle. If you were to take someone from the mid-90s who was familiar with mobile phones and give them this and say, make a phone call, they wouldn't know how to do it. So this is a tool we use to shepherd people into a new paradigm. And skeuomorphism is when we use iconography and design from things people are familiar with to introduce them to a new concept. Apple are absolutely brilliant at this. If you look back at the first iPhone, look at the Notepad app. It was literally a yellow legal letter. Look at Micro, it's an all-American. The newsstand was a visual representation. So to introduce, to shepherd people into a smartphone paradigm, we heavily relied on skeuomorphism. And then what Apple did brilliantly, if you compare the original iPhone to the new one, with every iteration, that gradually made it more abstract with every new iPhone. So they shepherded us into this until it just becomes second nature. This obviously is a new thing. Mr. Ashley is obviously a fan of Windows 95. And I also rely heavily on skeuomorphism. I think the most iconic bit of skeuomorphism ever was probably the recycle bin.
Yes.
And it's actually genius when you think about it, because first time using a desktop computer, you intuitively know I can delete it, but I can bring it back. Oh, bloody hell, it's not gone forever.
Wait, I think defrag is a number to close numbers.
Yeah, and anachronistic, how anachronistic does my briefcase sound now? So can skeuomorphism go too far? Perhaps. So for the philosophers among you, John Baudrillard had this concept of a simulacrum. And I think the save icon is a brilliant example of a simulacrum. It's when originally it's skeuomorphic. Hey, you can save things on a hard disk now, but we're going to give you a floppy disk because that's what you're familiar with to click save. We all know, I think we're all old enough in this room to know that. To younger people now, they don't know what bloody floppy disk is. So the original intent has lost its meaning. To a younger generation, this just means save. So Baudrillard called this a simulacrum. It's a representation of a representation, but becomes detached from its original meaning.
Interesting.
I'll talk about this a little bit later, but he wrote a fantastic book where he argues what we live in now is essentially what he calls a hybrid reality, because there's so many simulacrums everywhere that have lost their original meaning in design, in digital, everywhere. Flow. So this is tool number 4. I think the best way to demonstrate flow is to talk about Doug Engelbart and his team. Doug was an absolute visionary in pioneering how we interact with technology in an induced state of flow. And he's also a very good representation of the idea of the future is already here, it's just not evenly distributed yet. And I want to play a short video of Doug Engelbart and what his research team were doing. And it's called The Mother of All Demos. And I want you to realize this is 1968.
If in your office you as an intellectual worker were supplied with a pure display backed up by a computer that was alive for you all day, was instantly responsive, instantly responsive to every action you had, how much value could you derive from that? Well, this basically characterizes what we could pursue for many years in what we call the Alternative Intellect Research Center at Stanford Research Institute. We're going to try our best to show you, rather than tell you, about this program. Okay, there's diameter stand, middle part. And in a second we'll see the screen that he's working and the way to track his spot moves in conjunction with movements of that mouse. I don't know if I recall a mouse. Sometimes I apologize. It started that way and we never change it. There's the way I'm going to sit here and look at him. Like a caper. That's the way I start many projects. So with my system, that's it. Could start. I'm going to sit here and say, I'd like to load that in. So I'm going to get an entity called a statement. It's whole others, these whole words. If I make some mistakes, I could back up a little bit. So I have a statement with some entities words, and I could do some operations on these. To copy a word. Say that word like copy after it. So let's make more statements. So I'll say copy that statement. To roll me all down another one. Copy that one. Another one. I can even copy boost the statements. I could say after that one, copy fruit from there. That does. So let me jump back ahead with this. And I could do things like again to reorganize it and roll that up. I say after man is that's more likely that I'll take the carrots there. So under the organizer, if I say just generally bodies. Right, bodies side back chair. And I'm doing it there also on the others. Jump like a little whooper. Or you just the nipples. Also, I created for something called Java link. And a link is something that'll go between files So what it's going to do, it says I'm ready to go to your filing a CRO. So here's what I drew with a picture drawing capability. Here's a slide map when I start from work. And here's the route I seem to have to go to pick up all the materials. And that's my plan for getting home tonight. But if I want to, I can say, the library, what am I supposed to pick up there? I could just connect to that. And oh, I see, all the do books, oh, there's a statement there with that name on it. Or, so on his display, he sees my text, so I'll execute it. And sure enough, it does. But what's that? Right here out. Well, if he's looking at my text, he'd like to have something to say about it. So we put on a marker, a tracking spot that he controlled. So he's sitting in a mental block looking at this text, and he can fight to it. But we carefully reserved for me the right to control and operate on this. So my blog is more powerful than yours. We got an argument. Yeah. Super buck fight. So we start now audio coupling, and we're both looking at the same display, and then you were handy to work, we could talk to each other at point, and maybe later I could hand you the chalk on this blackboard. I say, here, you control it. But let's stay this mode now. And I had another feature that hardware-wise is available, the kind of display we have. I'd like to see while I'm working on it. We're ready to go for a picture. Down an hour to array mental power to pipe it up. How many mental power? I built. That's great. Now we're connected. Audio. See my work, you can point at it. I can see your face and we can talk. So let's do some collaborating. And a forthcoming involvement is this ARCBO computer network, experimental network, that's going to come into being in its first form in about a year, and then they'll have sometime later with some 20 experimental computers in a network, which will mean also that I could be running a system in Cambridge over that network and getting the same kind of response on a CRT. And it may be that people there, and next time they have a conference in Boston, I'll try this from there. And in that network, we're going to try to develop a special service to provide network information for our network information for people, for the kind of information that it takes to operate such a network. Who's got what services, what protocol I use to get there, who's up to date, what's the user's guide, where can I find the paper that describes this system that so-and-so offers. That's going to be a very challenge for us to utilize our tools for organizing and retrieving information.
No, not.
That was so cool.
What I think is amazing about that, I know not everyone's a technology geek, but I don't care even if you're a Luddite. The fact that this guy was doing that in 1968 is
That's so wild.
And if you look at a lot of what he talked about from conferences, diving in, that's the genesis of what we're doing today.
Oh,
We had that technology there.
Now,
An idea we saw.
let me see if I can, my still. So,
by that time, all that had been and done it.
the main idea behind Emerald Bike have these two devices in the video. I don't know if you saw the mouse and this, which is the closest thing we have today is a stenography device and core breach. Engelbart's idea is that we should interact with technology in a state of the flow. And he envisaged it like someone playing a violin. So the idea was the mouse would be the bow, and you'll play chords to interact with computers. So you could just really get into a state of flow. And the mouse caught on, this thing died. So we got halfway through Engelbart's dream. So we have a mouse and a keyboard, which isn't quite pure flow. We do stop-start with technology. But we now have touchscreens, pinch and zoom, swipe, scroll, which is much more going back towards Engelbart's vision of interacting with technology in a flow-like state.
Do you think that's intentional, or that's the natural way of things?
It's just a way of the way the ships fell.
Okay.
So I want to talk a little bit now about paradigm shifts. So big corporations quite famously are bad at dealing with paradigm shifts in tech. This is where the upstarts generally come on top of them. The super famous example is Kodak, who invented the digital camera back in the 1970s, but then mothballed it because most of their revenue came from film. And they just didn't see the revenue in it. By the time they realized the mistake, it was too late. Kodak, they're bankrupt now, I believe.
Yeah, they still exist.
This should do image printing of some sort. But they're a shadow of their films.
The other thing I play in love is Xerox. So There's a little bit of cultural organizational reasons here. So Xerox back in the day used to have their headquarters on the East Coast, and they have a research lab on the West Coast. So not only is that a huge geographical distance in the 70s, but there's also the Americans here. No, there's a cultural difference between our East and West Coast thinking.
Sure.
So the boys in the research lab came up with this, which is called the Xerox Alto. Absolutely revolutionary. By the way, these guys were based just around the corner from Doug Engelbert and his team, so they were listening. It had Windows, it had a graphical user interface, it had a mouse, it had email. Absolutely revolutionary. This was 1978, I believe. The guys on the East Coast didn't give a damn because they were more interested in selling printer tone, photocopying machines. Didn't get it. So that was fatal mistake number one. Fatal mistake number two was allowing a very young, early 20s Steve Jobs to have a tour of a research facility. About 3 or 4 years later, Jobs released the Mac and took a lot of these ideas. I think it's, he improved upon them, but,
Well, I think Steve Wozniak might have been the one that did.
What's interesting is about 5 years later, when Bill Gates released Windows, Steve Jobs accused Bill of copying the Mac. And Bill Gates famously turned around and said, the way I see it, Steve, we both broke into the same house. You just stole the television first. So, misuse. Can these techniques be misused? Absolutely. The really famous one is dark patterns. And this is the use primarily on the internet these days to use these techniques to force you to do something that you necessarily don't want to do. This is the RAC app. RAC is a breakout service here in the UK, where this is a really common one. They want you to opt into their marketing, they hide it, and they widen the gulf of evaluation and execution so that you have to make more mental effort to actually opt out. There's loads of these dark patterns. They're everywhere on the internet. I'm not going to go through all of these, but it's useful reference. Couple of examples. Sneak into basket. We've all had this. You're checking out and they add insurance or luggage. Or my pet peeve when I go to the US, resort fees on hotels. The other one, disguised ads. These are prevalent on newspaper websites, and they use skeuomorphism to disguise an ad as a newspaper, as an article.
Yeah.
So you click on it thinking you're going into it.
Like that restaurant we were at the other night, they made you download the app to order, or you could just go to the bar.
Absolutely. The other misuse is attention hijacking. I think young people today call this doom scrolling.
Yeah.
But if you look at TikTok, look at what they've done. Firstly, they narrow the gulf of evaluation and execution to watching as a swipe. It's so easy to get your next video. They've induced a state of flow in the app by the way you design it. You can just unconsciously go through social media. And also they've introduced skeuomorphism so that even your ground number could sign up, create an account, and use this thing. So before I finish off, I just want to talk a few book recommendations. The Design of Everyday Things by Don Norman, whom Norman doors are named after. Absolutely fantastic book on product design. Simulacra and Simulation is a Baudrillard philosopher book. This is actually what influenced the Matrix trilogy and the Wachowski brothers. And every actor who signed up to be in the Matrix had to read this. I think it was in the contract, but they all read this book. And then lastly, User-Centered Designs, which takes some of the pioneering work by Doug Engelbert. Don Norman did a bit of this as well. Absolutely fantastic book if you're interested, going a little bit deeper into some of these concepts. But that's it really. I hope this has given you an introduction to some of the techniques that are all around us. And I hope it kind of opens your eyes to the invisible landscape of design that's everywhere. And also, I hope, gives you some tools to help protect you against some of this misuse. So, thank you.
I need to hear.